Alrighty, welcome to this webinar on how to accelerate your data-driven journey, where we're going to share 4 proven methods for making your progress faster and more accelerated. My name is Emma Storbacka. I'm the Group CEO at Avaus, and I'm super pleased to have with me here today a great group of people who are both experts and practitioners in this field. So we have Eldar. Hi Eldar, how are you doing?
Hi Emma, I'm just fine, thanks.
Great to have you here. We also are very honored to be joined by our client at Viking Line. So we have Tom and Niklas. Hi guys.
Hello.
Super great to have you on here. And I hope that we're going to have a great discussion with a lot of learnings and a lot of real life experiences from the world of cruise ships. And then finally, we have Jenny, who is leading the engagement from our side. Hi, Jenny. Are you prepared to share some best practices and learnings from our work together?
Hello, everyone. And yes, I'm super excited. So let's get started.
Great. So on the agenda today, we're going to jump pretty much straight into it. I'm going to give you a short intro of who you're listening to and who Avaus is, so you know what's behind these 4 proven methods and our way to approach questions around becoming data-driven in marketing, sales, and service. Then we're going to go through these 4 methods and exemplify them with the help of the Viking Line team and discuss some different aspects. And I hope that you will get a lot of good insights to bring with you into your daily work. And then at the end, we're going to have a Q&A session. You don't have to worry about taking screenshots. You can focus on listening in. All materials and the recording will be sent out to all registrants after this webinar. During the webinar, you're able to, in the platform, ask questions. You can also vote for other attendees' questions. If there's something you don't need to ask again, but you want to say that, hey, that's a great question, please answer it. And we'll make sure that we answer all questions at the end. In the event that we would be late at the end, we hope to fit this into 1 hour. Then we will answer the questions in the follow-up email. So who's then Avaus and why are you here listening to us? Well, we are a Nordic boutique consultancy. We specialize on unlocking business value from customer data using automation and AI. And we've been in the space of AI since years back. So we're super excited about all of this fuss and all of this hype around AI and how you can use it to drive more business value. You can read more about us on our website. You can also look into our client cases, and you can definitely download some of our great assets. For instance, our cookbook that contains 50 different data algo action use cases for becoming more AI-driven in marketing and sales. Now, we know, because we have been working in this field for more than 15 years, that most companies struggle really hard with turning all of the investments that you've made in MarTech, in technology, in data, in really competent and great personnel into data-driven value. So a lot of investment, but the return is sort of insecure or unsure. And we know that most companies struggle with very similar topics. And that's why we have been working very hard with creating methodologies and technical accelerators to sort of bridge that gap in the most sort of future-proofed and de-risked way. And that's how we always approach the question of becoming more data-driven. So we make sure that we have a use case-based approach. We focus on the business value rather than the technical aspects first. Then we have some methodologies and assets for accelerating your progress. One of those is the library of both technical and use case examples. And then we work long-term in cross-competence teams to make that happen. And that methodology that we apply is basically 4 things that are really central. And in today's webinar, we're going to make sure to give you a little bit of a glimpse of those 4 things. I'm also here announcing that during this month, we're going to launch a toolbox online with some very concrete templates and toolboxes for you to use in the domain where you might feel that this is what's holding us back. This is why we can't bridge the gap between our digital transformation investments and all of that promise of data-driven, automated customer and efficiency value. So today we're going to go through these 4 areas together. And with us here today, we have Viking Line. So Tom, why don't you give us a little bit of an intro? You are not on the boat right now, are you?
Not quite, no, but quite often we run 5 ships on the Baltic Sea, like the one you see behind me. We made quite a good comeback after a few difficult years last year, running 5 million passengers, having a normal cargo unit amount and coming back to a normal turnover of around 500 million euros. We operate, as mentioned, on the Baltic Sea, with Sweden and Finland and Estonia as our main business markets.
Great. And what can you tell us on the high level of your ambition? Why are you trying to become data-driven?
I think it was in winter 21 or 22 that we identified that we have a lot of valuable data, but also knew that legislation is continuously changing, and we need actually also to take momentum from what was happening within the company, change management. We were starting to operate in a different way within Viking Line due to the difficult years that we had, and also wanted to take advantage of the IT landscape that would give us possibilities. And coming back to data, we knew that we want to do more with what we have.
Great. And we're going to hear more about how that journey has started, navigating through the seas of data-driven, if you will.
Yeah, we collected a group of, let's say, 15 persons, experts from around Viking Line, both in data, customer experience, loyalty, digital marketing, and so on, and had a workshop there and tried to figure out what we want to do. And then we quite soon identified at the end of this workshop that we need help from outside. And this is when we contacted Avaus and started to discuss how we would go forward.
And it's been a great journey since, and we are very grateful to work with your team as well. I think we are very well aligned and integrated into each other. So hope to shed some of that light also for those listening today. So speaking of the 4 methods for acceleration, so all of these stem from pain points that we typically see when we work with enterprises trying to become data-driven. And the first one that we're going to assess is setting a concrete strategy, a concrete enough strategy, let's say like this. And one of the pain points that I quite often notice is that there's no shared language between IT and the business. And when you talk about application of data, you don't really understand what the other part thinks needs to be done. It's also often so that we don't really know what the target state is. There might be a vision of, we want to be personalized, or we want to be relevant to our customers, or we want to be customer centric, but nobody has tied that down into what that actually means in sort of concrete actions and concrete use cases. And then, of course, not really knowing what to do first or how to prioritize. And quite often also there's this notion of, let's do one thing first and then figure out what we need to do. And you get sort of stuck in these sort of proofs of concepts and short-term pilots that don't really lead to this sort of systematic path towards data drivenness, and this slows us down and it creates confusion for the data driven process. And that's why we've developed our methodology, where there is a very standardized way of starting sort of that journey. And it takes about 3-4 months, and we did it together last fall. So how we're now 1.5 years almost into the journey from you sort of starting thinking about becoming data driven. How would you describe that start of the collaboration and that start of your data driven journey?
Well, I mentioned our internal workshop. You can see the picture on the left where we are planning this internally and thinking how we should go forward. We found some good initiatives there, but as mentioned, then contacted you quite soon. It's a question of building trust when you start something like this. We were a small group of 10-15 persons within Viking Line, but we had to get top management on board also. And we understood that at the same time that you build a business case, you also need to be enough pragmatic and detail focused that you also start to talk about use cases, what you actually will do and how you will actually measure it. So this was a good combination that was a story for our management, that they started to understand what we need to do and build this trust that I mentioned.
So would you say that trust comes from granularity?
I think to be concrete enough.
Yeah.
And have a story about how you will work first, but also what happens later, say year 1 or year 2, and how you will measure it also.
And we started together by first doing sort of more the business case and the sort of financial modeling around this. And then we went down to very technical and very pragmatic sort of planning. How would how was that process for you internally with your stakeholders at Viking Line?
Yeah, we split it up the work into first taking this business case to a point where we could have this first understanding on what we want to do and get done. So it was important for us to first have this business model, of course. What are we doing and what could come out of this? And then continuing on this concrete and pragmatic method of taking these use cases on the table and choosing and working on them so that we have a roadmap also.
And how long is that roadmap?
For us, it's now a bit over 2 years that we will work on it continuously, but all in all, 3 years, I'd say.
So this was a really intense fall together, and I think Nikke and Jenny were very much in the center of that, driving from each side. So Nikke, how would you describe the process of starting to get to know each other and actually learning together about what needs to be done in the context of Viking Line?
Yeah, like you said, it was an intense phase. We had several meetings a week with Jenny and the other persons at Avaus. We start to look at what kind of things we can do. But even though it was intense, it was also a really good relationship building exercise. We got to know each other really well. We knew where we had each other. We started plan from the scratch together with Avaus. That was the great thing about it when we started to know, and then when we started after the EPP phase, then we knew where we had each other really well.
Sometimes it can be a bit hard for somebody who's coming from the, or hard for an organization to welcome somebody coming from the outside and having all of these ready-made concepts and a view of how things should be done. How do you think that was difficult, or did we find each other fast enough?
I think it's a little bit subjective how you welcome somebody. Has harder for us. I think for the team on the Viking Line side, it was quite easy for us to welcome Avaus because, like Tom mentioned, we had the workshop. We were all in. We had worked internally a roadmap for it. We knew this need to be done, so to say. So we were really how to say it. We were really excited to start the work. So that's why we were really positive that we now can start. And I think the intensivity in the beginning really kicked it off as well for us.
Yeah, it created momentum and maybe some additional spark of change, willingness.
Yeah, exactly.
So in this planning phase, then we did a business case, we listed use cases, and then we started looking at the solution design for the technical setup and the customer data. How are we going to run all of these data-driven initiatives to sort of then reach that business case? Before that. So the key takeaways from this first section, I was jumping ahead. What you said and what we've tried to summarize here, aligning with all key stakeholders in the organization. I think this 15 people workshop was a great way to do that, probably. And also we have seen a great engagement from all around the organization in this project, even though everybody cannot be, of course, there on a daily basis. And then have a clear business case and sort of the long-term view of what's about to go down, and granular enough and a step-by-step approach. So we have the pre-study, and then we have the planning, and then the actual development work starting. Would this be a good summary of how it started and what others should take away? Anything you would like to add?
I think this is good. I think this summarizes the building of trust between Avaus and Viking Line.
Great. So now to what I was jumping ahead towards. So we had the granular plan of what we want to do, and we had also planned a solution for how we should build a scalable customer data capability. And here I'm going to hand over to Eldar to take us through what to think about when you design technical data solutions.
Thanks, Emma. What I would say is that, and what we have identified is that, the typical challenge we see in the organization is that they rather stuck with the old-fashioned customer data stack, where they are trying to solve problems by purchasing the SaaS solutions when you have more fundamental problems to solve. Typically, you will invest in the CDP platforms. However, if your customer data is not structured in the smart way in your cloud environment, you will be redesigning that data fits into CDP. While truly that's not the fitting any other needs you have in the organization. And that's also a lot of effort for something that shouldn't be a problem. So you're kind of trying to design your data so it fits the vendor instead of implementing the vendors so it supports your organization by you taking the data in the best manner. And additionally, these procedures often may lead to the high cost that you are not utilizing the features of the SaaS tools that you have invested in and purchased, and that perhaps is something that you will require, that you will not met the stack you have in the place. So you are investing a lot of money in the expensive tools and platforms, but you're not getting out the most value for that. And if we are looking from the Avaus factory perspective, so if you switch to the next slide, Emma. So as you can see here, so what we are doing is, and what we are developing is that we are developing a solution that is more flexible, composable, and data-centric, where you solve many of your customer data structuring problems in the cloud environment. You are leveraging the microservices architecture and the microservices that are independent from each other. And you build for the change rather for kind of chasing the future target architecture. We help you here. What helps you also here a lot is, of course, the use case based planning. So you're planning everything based on the use case and implementing the gradually and investing and seeing the fast changes and the fast results, instead of building something for multiple years and then hoping that you will get back the investment or ROI. This also means that if you, for instance, want to change some elements, in example, in some of different components, as you can see on this here picture, you can easily do that. There is no dependencies between them. There is like nothing that says that if you pull out one or implement another, that something is going to break. As I said earlier, they are like independent microservices. And also, if you would like to add a CDP platform on top of it, you can also do that. So this is a kind of scalable microservices architecture where you don't have any dependencies and creating any monolith. And this is also the way that we have built the capabilities together with the Viking Line. As you can see on this picture, we are using different technologies. And as you can see also here, we have developed a great number of the things together with Viking Line, but also with our components and also implementing some other third-party components. So Tom, what was important to you when designing the customer data architecture?
Well, as mentioned, we identified that we have this data, a lot of data on the left on the picture, and we understood that we have a good understanding of our different activation channels, and we're using them quite well. But what we also noticed was that we don't have the intelligence, the orchestration and management, data management, decision making engine in the middle of this picture. So this was something that we needed your support. We wanted to build something that was not a monolith, as you call it. We didn't knock on Salesforce's or anybody else's door. Instead, we understood that we need to build this from different building blocks. This is actually quite familiar to us in any case that we build something, anything from booking systems to other platforms. So we were comfortable about this model of building.
Yeah, very nice to hear. And also, as you also mentioned, it's really important, to try to get this scalability and flexibility. And also, as you said, building the monolith is not the examples or the solutions that we are focusing on. We really want to be able to create this flexibility and also see where some of the components are not fitting so that we can easily replace them or apply some other. And any specific blocks that you see that was missing in this, I would say, reference architecture from your point of view?
Well, it's good to mention that we are still in the construction phase, still building. And for instance, I'm quite excited about this orchestration tool that we have been now starting to put up, what it actually will bring to us, so that we have a hands-on tool that can orchestrate what we want to do in which channel and get real concrete action and good customer experience that way.
Exactly, and that is kind of the really good thing with the architecture and the design and solution that we are working on together. So what we are doing is that we are collecting data from different third-party services from your website, apps, CRM, and then we are transforming that into the Google Cloud Platform. In this case, we are using Google Cloud Platform, but we are able to use any other services. And then the orchestration is a third party that we are utilizing for pushing the data that we have created with help of our algo components to the different activation channels, as in this case, Adobe Campaign. And then we are using the Power BI for measurement and the reporting. Thanks, Tom. And if I jump over to you, Nikke, what kind of the use cases are you working with and planning to work with in the future?
So we started quite simply. At first, we looked at should we aim for quick wins or should we aim for scalability? When we choose the first use cases, we chose more the scalability, but we started quite simply with use cases that we can scale. For example, in our case, it was pre-bookings or a communication to the customers between they have booked and they enter the ship. So we started to we wanted more sales from them. We already had workflows in Adobe Campaign. We communicated with them, but how can we make them better, for example? That was what we wanted to try to aim at first because we had the tool for it. We just needed to improve a little bit Adobe Campaign workflows. So there where we started. Then we have started with SMS, for example, to improve the customer journey a little bit. Customer experience should be better, more of info for the customer. For example, we launched a new app during the summer, a new version of our app. So we started to promote that as a travel companion. When you travel during high season, for example, you have all the cruise program in the app and so on. So we started to send out SMSs to our customers that remember to download the app. It's your best travel companion when you travel now, and so on. So that's where we started.
Yeah, and in this once again, this is a really good case, and also to explanation back to what we talked about earlier is that you don't need to just remove all infrastructure and all services that you already have in your domain. As we said earlier, we're just applying additional amount of components and the services that are enabling and giving even more value from already existing services in your domain. And really good choice of not sitting and taking this fragile roadmap and developing something and then hoping that we will get results, instead of doing this in the agile main way, where we are implementing and improving continuously based on the results and the information that we are getting back out from the measurement and the reporting. So it's really clever. And the next slide, so just to kind of wrap it up. So, and how we see that this is a way forward is that really focus on building the end-to-end solution with capability by use case. So not sitting and try to solve all challenges at once. Instead, take one or two and then implement that end-to-end to see the results immediately. Because that also brings you, the guideline if you're going into the right direction or if you need to change the direction. And then enablement of microservices-based architecture, as Nikke said also earlier, by implementing those services inside of your organization and your infrastructure is giving you possibility of reusing a lot of investment that you have already done. So you don't need to throw those money that you have already invested. Instead, invest a small portion of money and then try to get out the fastest results as possible. And then, of course, fix the data at the core, and just adding a new shiny SaaS solution in your infrastructure will probably not solve the problems, because if you have the problems on the left side by collecting the data and structuring data and creating the models of data of getting the best results, that is where you will see the biggest challenges. Thank you. So back to you, Emma.
Thanks. Nikke, Tom, anything to add here before we start talking about less technical and more emotional things?
No, I think this quite well describes our ramp-up phase. To be honest, we're still building. And one interesting dimension to this is that our data guys are quite excited. They like this way of working with building piece by piece and putting together different modules and learning by doing. So looks promising.
One of the things that I'm super excited about is that while we've now put the data in shape, we've also implemented our machine learning framework, which means that we will be able to productionize algorithms really quickly into that current data model and sort of infuse that everywhere. So we're just getting started. It's going to be an exciting.
Looking forward to it.
All right, but these are technical things, and as we say, tech is the easy part. That's never what's gonna sort of set you back. And next, we're gonna talk about managing change. And I know that this is a topic that's very important for you guys at Viking Line as well. And I've been very impressed with your way of sort of looking at the change management topic as being equally important as, what technical solution and how do we work together and what are the results. It's all the time been sort of an equally important part or maybe even more important. And maybe if I look at what I typically see if this is not given the proper attention is that it's unclear where you're going. There might be resistance to change, either that you don't want to, or then that you don't know how to change. You don't, nobody's holding your hand and telling you that this is what's needed from your role in the future in a sort of data-driven, AI-driven world. And especially now with all of the news around AI, it really is a frightening time even for some members in our organization. And there might be also communication problems and sort of being able to explain and find that common language by which we understand what we mean with certain things, like being data-driven or like AI. Those words can mean very different things for different people. And if we don't address these pain points and these topics, what we see is that this typically leads to projects like this derailing completely, bike shedding happening. I'm not sure if you know what bike shedding is, but it's, there was a nuclear power plant being built and the planning committee spent more time discussing the color of the bike shed than actually the very complex power plant buildup. So in a way, we find these small things to attach to because we understand them, and then we spend a lot of time on sort of discussing the wrong topics. And it also leads to sort of goals not being met, the investment being slowed down, and also people not feeling very well or very engaged. I mean, a change like this should be, of course, a career opportunity and something exciting that you see that you can build your future work life on, and not the other way around. So carefully crafted change management is really, really key in the data-driven journey. And I see most companies not focusing enough on this. But you guys have been talking about change management from the very start. I remember even the first discussion we had, Tom, together, you were lifting up this concern that how do we make sure that everybody is on the journey with us. So here are some things on a slide that we've been discussing together in terms of change. But if you would put some words around what is actually the change that your personnel is going to see and your stakeholders are going to see when becoming more data-driven.
I remember that we have been talking many times about this not being left in the harbor, so to say, that we are actually together working on this. I think we should start from just understanding that we need to focus on our customers and not being Viking Line driven too much. Looking at new dimensions on how we report and how we understand what our customers are doing, becoming more curious on what they actually do. I think having clear KPIs and understanding that way that what actually happens. I mean, we can make mistakes in some use cases and change according to what we measure. That's something that we understand and want to do. I think we've done, as many companies do, too many projects earlier that haven't been measured good enough. You have a business case, but you don't follow it well enough. But this is something that we want to do, and actually is also something that the organization asks for in this case. Then I'm quite excited also about this competence change. We have regular competence upskilling sessions, and I mentioned our data experts. They regularly sit down and work together with your guys, and we are also having more people coming in to take care of this case together.
do you see it as being new competence for existing roles, or do you also think that you will need new roles in the future in a more data-driven way of working?
I think it's a combination. Nikki, you can fill me in, but I think we both need to learn new things, including myself also, and then taking in enforcements from hopefully good people that want to work with Viking Line.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Tom. There, start building the competence inside, but of course, maybe we should take someone in or some kind of competence in the future. We are not quite there yet to know what we need in the future, because this is still a huge learning process for us.
I think that's a good point.
I could just add that.
Yeah, go ahead.
The way of working, where we are quite pragmatic and have these use cases and skilling sessions, is making people curious, and they want to be involved and dig in and start working. If it would be more a classical way of working, that the consultants are taking care of a lot of things, then I think people would be a bit, awkward with the situation and unsure what their role is. But now we have, from the beginning, made sure that everybody will get involved.
So here are some of the examples that you wanted to bring up here, and Jenny and Nick, maybe if you comment a little bit on a very pragmatic level, like what is that change management on a daily basis or weekly basis? We heard that there are teams working together. What else?
Yeah, so we have the upskilling sessions every Thursday, actually, where we sit together on Teams and go through what we have done and what we are going to do the next week and so on, and go through every use case and what kind of content we should be creating from our side, for example. And of course, we just don't have the meetings. We have Teams where we chat with each other maybe every day sometimes. And so we are quite fast in that way. So we don't wait until the meeting. Then we have the monthly newsletters where we communicate to a larger group of stakeholders within the company, or others that are interested can see what have been done and what is in the pipeline and so on. And then we have the steering group meetings every quarter with the largest stakeholders. Did I forget anything, Jenny?
No, I think you summarized it quite well, and I could maybe do a short wrap up of of the key takeaways or learnings maybe from at this stage. I think it's quite important.
Before you do, can I just throw in a curveball to all three of you, because I loved what you said, Tom, about everybody needing to upskill yourselves, and I think that's like exactly the attitude you need to have in all roles. So, what are your major upskillings so far in this journey? So sorry for the curveball, but maybe you have some good reflections on that.
Well, at least for my part, I've been impressed by the way we document things in this project. It's very comfortable when you have everything put on document, and you can go back and go through things and make informed decisions. I would say this has been good for me. Then at the same time, I'm also excited for the future. I've heard that we all have to sit down and start doing algorithms soon in the future. So
yeah, you're going to be forced to make the algo leap.
Excited about this. Yeah.
Nikke, what about you?
For me, it's maybe more of a technical upskilling. I'm more of the marketing guy. I have some technical knowledge, but the whole architecture about it, what do you need, is more now something that I learned that you need to Google Cloud Platform, and then you need the orchestrate or the high touch in between, for example, that you need to take all the tools and how you do it.
What about you, Jenny? Super good answers.
Yeah, I think from for our team especially, it's very interesting to dig deeper in the Viking Line context and the customer data and getting really hands-on with what type of personalization and communication works. It's a working process. So you test and learn your way of what use cases work the best and how the channels work and what type of customers there are that we would like to be even better with communicating at. So I think that is the most exciting part for me. I'm very result oriented. So I think that's for me the key takeaway from the project we have been doing so far.
Excellent answer to the curveball. Sorry for that.
Emma.
Sorry?
Emma, can I throw the curveball back to you? What do you think?
To me? Yes, of course. Now I should have been thinking about an answer for that. I think the major upskilling for me in this collaboration has perhaps been the stakeholder management that I think you, Tom, have been doing quite well. The value of sort of leading the process, not only in the project, but also surrounding it, and how important it is to capture what's happening in the organization and then make sure that the project knows what people are concerned about or what we need to do better so that we can adjust that immediately and not when that becomes an issue. So I think that type of collaboration between you and our team is something that I have become an advocate for in other collaborations as well, that there needs to be this trusting dialogue and kind of joint. And the other thing that's been really great, I think, is our incentivization model and how we work together on that. But that's the next topic, so we can maybe go to the next step with if Jenny just takes us through a summary of the change management.
Yes, absolutely. I think you said it all here during our discussions, but it's a lot about recognizing who we need to involve in the organization from day one in this process to make order that we make sure that all of us are on board, and we really have to make sure that those change management activities are also planned. And it is also super crucial that we do it on different levels and systematically. So not only having a large kickoff and leaving it to that and coming back in half a year and report what's happening next, but really having different type of communication, as Nikke mentioned, newsletters and upskilling sessions to different across teams and workshops with larger audiences. I think that has been a key for us also, how to engage the organization. And we're just getting started. This is by no means ending here, but we are actually adding on more of those activities all the time. And then, of course, a very, very important part is that we measure what we do. So we, of course, want to show all the technical parts and co-work together, co-code and plan for the use cases, but we really want to anchor our collaboration also in the results, so that we are doing the right things and that we are actually measured against the plan and the business case we did in the beginning. And we do this in an iterative way. So we, of course, learn what works and what doesn't work. But I think that wraps up a little bit what's coming up next as the fourth key pillar.
Great, thank you, Jenny. So the fourth pillar here for success is about reporting and creating that joint view of what success looks like. And we see that this is neglected almost always in all organizations. You mentioned it, Tom, as well, that it's quite typical that you make a business case, but there's no follow-up. And typically that might be because there's not really a good KPI agreed, or that you aren't simply able to follow that KPI through the data. So this is also a technical problem. And it might be that you need to do analysis on a ad hoc basis, and you haven't sort of, for example, implemented a metrics layer into your database where you would always agree on that churn means this, and revenue is always calculated or measured like this, or margin is always this for this product. And that creates a fuzziness in the reporting and a lot of extra work that doesn't really get done. And then why doesn't it get done? Well, it might be a lack of ownership. So we haven't clearly addressed sort of who needs to make sure that this is possible to follow, and what do we do when something is going wrong, or how do we get benefits of something going right. And then, of course, the change management part of reporting is as well important. I mean, not in this case, but for example, in a B2B sales organization, what we might see is that if you're starting to do more data-driven sales, and you can sort of even see how that's taking over some of the sales being done by people today, there might be even people who don't want to see the results, because that's actually even threatening a little bit their own position or their own role. Many people don't want to automate away, budgets or teams, also because of their own role. So it's sort of a tricky and more sensitive topic than one might perhaps think. And then we often get caught up in these like technical challenges with reporting that nobody really wants to invest in solving. But however, if you don't solve them, it's going to be very risky for you to sort of invest in becoming data-driven. So it's really, really important that you set that up from the start. And the way that we have now set that up is using sort of some of the best practices that we bring into this. So one is that it's very aligned to the strategy, and all of the planning that we've been doing in the beginning of the project is of course then now connected to how we follow up on both progress but also success. Then we realized that there needs to be reporting on several levels. So your management team or board is not going to want to see the same reports as the marketing team or the data team. So we need to be able to sort of create that hierarchical pyramid of what makes sense to look at and what's the granularity level that we want to have. And then the last part is really about the technical thing. So how do we ensure that we understand, for example, the concept of a customer the same way, or the concept of churn the same way? And those are typically things that coexist in the organization in different reports and different units, and there's no clear common view. And that's one of the things that sort of solving those problems in the data, in the core, then allows you to, for example, optimize your media against that common view of what a good customer looks like, or what a likely profitable customer is made of. And the other thing is control groups, which we see that unfortunately are not implemented in a lot of organizations, which makes it very hard to say if you're actually having the type of impact that you think. And you might be even spending time on things that don't matter. You just don't know because you don't have anything to compare against. So the reporting area is quite complex, has quite a lot of technical aspects, and it's really, really important to put in place. And that's what we have been doing in this side of the year a lot. So Jenny and Nick, what or should I actually Tom first, results and measuring results. What does that mean in terms of targets? I mean, if we want to have results, then also we need to have targets. And we've agreed on some very clear targets.
Yeah, we go back to the actual business case, and the more granular than use cases. We have targets for each and every use case. We measure both the financial dimension, but also the amount of use cases we do. And this has been, I think, a good thing. We actually see results now. I'm quite excited about the fact that a couple of weeks ago we had our dashboard of results or reporting published for us. And what I'm especially excited about is that it's automated, meaning that it's not like 5 guys sitting around and collecting numbers and putting them together every, say, month or week. Instead, it's automated from the beginning, meaning that we get the results and we get it against the what you mentioned, the control groups, and this is quite exciting for us actually.
And against these targets, we've agreed on something that I find to be very good for our collaboration and for our team. So we have a shared target and a shared incentivization model here in our collaboration, which means that we've given you some discount, and then we can earn it back if we succeed in doing what we've agreed to do in the business case. So how do you find that on your end?
I think it's good. I think it's added value for both. I mean, we obviously have our incentive to become more data-driven, but you should be as well incentivized by this, and it's added value for both that we have this model.
And I see it also keeping the team sort of very focused on the big topics and not the bike shedding, and
Yeah.
It's actually a method to reduce bike shedding and keep the eyes on the prize.
Yeah.
So Nick and Jenny, how do you now kind of, when you're working side by side on making this happen, how do you use the reporting and how are you prioritizing the different use cases that you're developing so that we reach the joint target that we both have very big interest in reaching?
Yes, I could start with that, and that I think is a really good question that ties sort of our incentivization and collaboration model together. So when we have started, of course, the first step or first target is to sort of create the end-to-end flow, that we have the customer data in place, that we have some sort of decisioning, and usually or typically we also use algorithms to make decisions what should be communicated to who. And then, of course, that we have the action in place. So what message goes through what channel. So first and foremost, the step is to ensure that we are reaching all the customers. And that has been sort of the first month focus in growing that volume and making sure that the customers get our messaging. Of course, at the same time, we prepare those capabilities. We look over for consent questions, that we are doing the right things, and that we are having the technical capabilities to later on then add on new channels and then add on a little bit more algorithms and AI into the decision making. So first growing volume, getting that reach and sort of having that communication in place with customers, and then going more into fine-tuning, that we are finding out the right people at the right time, making sure that we have predictions in place that tells us when to communicate in what channel. And then, of course, what should we communicate is equally important. So that is actually where we are at the moment. Nick mentioned earlier that we are doing the pre-booking communication. Now we are drilling down into what could we possibly, what could we offer in these different pre-booking messages to each customer? What is relevant for you if you travel as a family, or if you are a customer traveling for work or looking for some entertainment on the cruise? So that is going to happen next. So first big, and then more personalized with a little bit algorithm and AI decision making in place. So I think that guide is our guideline in choosing the use cases and testing them out.
Can I cut in and maybe, because we have a question here also from Måns, which is, can you share a few examples of the innovation which the Viking Line customers have seen so far and maybe are going to see? So you mentioned personalization of offers and kind of more relevance in the communication. Is there anything else that you see that will clearly add value to the Viking Line customers? Maybe Nick and Tom.
Yeah, we have a few in the pipeline. Like we have our loyalty program, and we have regular customers as well. So we are trying to focus and target them in a little different way. For example, should we sell to the customers that are not in the loyalty program, or should we do some activation or use case that gets more better customer experience and adds more customer value? For example, information about a trip. It could be when we have a special cruise, we have a special program on board the ships. We communicate that beforehand, so they have it when they enter the ship. They know where they should be, and so on. So these are kind of things. Is not only focus on the selling, always try to better the customer journey and better the customer experience. That is something that we have thought about.
Great, thanks. So Nick, if you think about your daily work now within the program and together with Jenny and our team, what are the targets that you're sort of looking at, and what's driving you every day now?
Of course, now when we have the reports, it's more fun to work with it. But I think should mention that when we do the reporting as well, we just don't look at Google Analytics data. We actually have the data, what is happening then on Bordership when we market things that you maybe cannot pre-book. We start to market things that you can buy in our tax-free shops, for example. We can actually measure it then because we have the reports that are connected to our POS system on Bordership, so we know actually how much of an uplift during the whole journey that they take with us, so to say. So that's really something that is motivating me to see the results now, and now to start building and see what we can do better with the results. Like we said, we are in the beginning of our journey. We have made small things, like Jenny said, that we should now focus on getting out the reach and so on, and even that have made an impact, as we can see. And now when we start to personalize the messaging, it's going to be really fun to see what kind of results we get.
I think that's a great point on actually measuring the uplift, and especially I'm excited to see how you can do more targeted sort of first-party data-based paid media, and then see what that has as an impact on Bordership. And that's going to be a completely new dimension to reporting on marketing impact on sales, which I'm sure will raise a lot of interest in the organization as well. We're coming to the end, but I would ask you, Jenny, maybe to summarize this reporting part still before we answer still maybe one or two questions.
Yes, absolutely. So first and foremost, we need to have a diligent reporting as the prerequisite for the investments, are really tying up those activities we do into what we have agreed in as a target, and also follow up that systematically. And for that, we need those technical capabilities in place, and a framework in an early stage, and also something to compare with. So the control groups giving us a benchmark on how marketing or service activities are performing. And then lastly, having a strategy for going forward with the use cases. So going first with volume and impact, not focusing on the nitty-gritty stuff. And then when we have that communication in place, then deep dive into relevance and personalization afterwards.
Excellent summary. So we have a few questions in the question box, and I'm going to ask them to the three of you guys. So we already discussed the customer value, but what would you say has been the biggest challenge so far?
If I may answer, then it would be the change management. As always, it's easy to change the technology, everything related to that, but changing people and attitudes and everything is interesting and continuous work, ongoing. And I think the way we work in this project is good for this, because we are pragmatic enough. We have results to show. We have upskilling sessions, as mentioned, and so on. So there are a lot of tools in the toolbox to use this case.
Thanks, Tom. What about Nikke?
Sometimes something that we were really concerned about is we have our daily work, and we are adding the project to many people, including myself and Tom and my team and other teams involved in the company. So it was a little bit can be sometimes challenging, but I think we have managed it quite well to handle all the workload yet. But of course, since the project are going forward and we're adding more kind of communication, we have a little bit the content team, so we need to update all the content and so on. We are still doing it manually. So that's a challenge for us. So that is something that we need to look at, how we can manage in the future also to be on the right, have the right content always.
Very good. What about you, Jenny?
I would say that finding an optimized way of working together is the key, and it always takes some learnings and learning by doing and trying out different things. So I would agree on what Tom and Nikki has said, and also finding those pain points in the processes that are maybe new or that we're building, and overcoming those are the ones. But it's part of the process, and it's also fun to try and learn on the way. And the more we do, the better we become, and the more efficient our processes also work. So I would say it's part of the process.
So change management, content management, and figuring out the way of working so that it's tailored to the prerequisites of the organization that we're working in. Very good answers. Thank you so much for taking the time, to all of our listeners, and also to our great speakers today. Thanks for sharing so generously your learnings and your thoughts. We end this webinar here, and also remind all of you that we have some exciting on-site events coming up as well. So we're going to have a generative AI breakfast in Sweden and in Finland. We have sales trends, marketing and sales trends for 2024, both in Finland and Sweden. And then we also have our Oktoberfest coming up in a few weeks in Munich, if you happen to be around. So thank you so much for taking the time. We are here, and the materials will be sent out to all of you later on over email, also available on our website. Have a great week, and see you soon again.